Nancy Mace, this was on Sunday, 6-week ban of abortion in South Carolina was defeated by, I think it was 2 Democratic state senators and 4 Republican ones, all women, who voted against this ban. And let's be clear, a 6-week a ban on abortion before 6 weeks is a ban on abortion, period. That's literally like saying a ban on abortion, prior to the time you get pregnant, because most people don't know that they're pregnant within the first 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's from the time. No one who menstruates gets freaked out if their period's 3 or 4 days late. Then they'll maybe take a pregnancy test if you're a week late. And then you have a week to get your abortion, and that's not going to be it's going to be so backlogged that it makes it basically physically impossible for that to happen.
Yeah, I'm not banning breakfast. I'm just saying you can't eat it before 11:55.
Right, exactly. And so that went down for defeat, and I suspect that's why Nancy Mace is on Face the Nation, at least being asked this question by Margaret Brennan about Ron DeSantis's abortion ban.
So can a Republican candidate who supports or signs into law, as Governor DeSantis did, a 6-week limit to abortion?
In the dead of night, by the way.
Can he succeed in running for the presidency? I mean, is this really going to be something that, and people who are in Republican districts have to make this calculus? You say you're in a purple one, so you have to compromise.
It's the number 2 issue in my district. Number 1 is inflation. The debt ceiling is an important issue. Number 2 is abortion and finding a middle ground. Signing a 6-week ban that puts women who are victims of rape and girls who are victims of incest in a hard spot isn't the way to change hearts and minds. It's not compassionate. The requirements he has for rape victims are too much, not something that I support as a non-starter. I am a victim of rape. I was raped by a classmate at the age of 16. I am very wary, and the devil's always in the details. We've got to show more care and concern and compassion for women who've been raped. I don't like that this bill was signed in the dead of night, and it puts them in a very difficult position for a general election, in my opinion, which is why I have been so vocal on this issue. I would like us to win. I would not only like us to win the Electoral College, I want us to win the popular vote. And if we can show the middle ground, which shouldn't be controversial, birth control shouldn't be controversial. It keeps the number of abortions down if women have access to birth control. It shouldn't be controversial.
Well,
all right. Well, first off, just a couple of things. I want to get to this idea of middle ground. But yes, DeSantis signed that bill in the dead of night, literally, because he knows that his fundamentalist fans in the Republican Party are going to know that he did it. And he doesn't want there to be footage. He doesn't want to make it look like he's excited about this, because he knows it is a non-starter in the general election. And I will also say, in Nancy Mace's district, I can assure you, by the time the election comes, inflation is not going to be the biggest issue. It's not going to be number 1. This notion, and I understand why it's done as a political matter, and so I'm not knocking that. But people should understand this. The idea of an abortion ban with an exception for rape or incest or in the life of the mother, that's all well and good. I understand why that is the pivot point that people talk about when they talk about these abortion bans. But the fact of the matter is, it also reveals the fundamental dynamic that is underlying this. And it's not that they are worried about the innocent life of a fetus. It is that they want to control the sexuality of women by saying, if you have sex, God has deemed whether or not you get pregnant, and you don't have the ability to decide. Now, it's inconsistent with the idea of like an abortion. They're basically saying, like, you got to take responsibility for your decision to have sex. And you got to, and by take responsibility, we're also saying, like, you have to have the baby. Because you don't get to take full responsibility and have control over your entire body. It's, you need to accept the consequences of making this very risky decision.
This vile choice. And if
you're going to have sex.
If you're in a marriage, then that is what should happen. You are in that legal binding agreement so that you can produce life. If you're outside of a marriage, well, that's your own promiscuity that needs to be punished. And then maybe we'll draw a middle ground here for rape and incest victims because they weren't promiscuous. They got raped, which is it's a great idea.
But that's my point. No, it's not a middle ground. It is actually
I was about
saying,
to be sarcastic and say that, like, a good thing we can prove rape and incest so effectively in this country. But, like, they don't. I know you can't strike a middle ground with theocrats. No. Go ahead.
But my point is, it's not a middle ground because in terms of the way that they calculate why an abortion is wrong, because it is actually, it is a sign that if they can sign on to this and actually believe that the reason why we can't allow abortions is because it is the killing of life in the form of a fetus. If they believe that, there would be no mitigation for rape. It is because they're saying you are forced to have the pregnancy because you made the mistake of saying you were going to have sex for something other than procreative reasons. That is what they are admitting. Now, completely understandable why people who are against abortion bans would want as many exceptions as possible, because as a practical matter, this has material implications for women. And it's also understandable why, as a political matter, you would bring this up.
I don't like it as a political matter, though.
But the reality is, for Nancy Mace, she is admitting that she signs on to this idea that someone who gets pregnant, who can get pregnant, and has made the decision to have sex, they are obligated by that decision to suffer the consequences.
What is the political value of this, though? Of saying that you
the political
strike
value,
the middle ground is for her, she's a moderate Republican, and she says she's in the purple district. It was +8 Republicans, so she must be scared shitless, by the way. That's why she's getting ahead of
exactly.
This.
And the political value is for her, and the political value for the people who don't want abortion bans is, in those situations, to make them look like extremists, because your average person is not going to make the time to sort of contemplate this relationship between, and by average person, I'm talking about like really Republican leaning person.
Using extreme cases to say, look how barbaric they are.
Exactly. I mean, that's where the political value is. In general, I agree with you, like because it obscures the fact that what's really going on is about control of women and people who can have who can be pregnant bodies, and it's not going to end here. It's just not.
Well, then that's fine. If she's a Republican, she can make that political case. I don't want to hear one Democrat make this case. Not one, because you are conceding that there is some situations in which women should be punished for having sex and being promiscuous. Or people who can get pregnant, having sex and being promiscuous, and that they shouldn't have the choice to have autonomy over their own bodies. And like, you can't give theocrats an inch. We literally just saw this. We just saw this with Dobbs. They've been saying since before I've been alive, that abortion should be a states' rights issue, and we should leave it to the states. There should be no ruling from the Supreme Court or federal guidelines on abortion. Let the states make that decision. Within 6 months, Lindsey Graham introduces, or how about less than that, 2 months or whatever, introduces a ban where it would be limited on the federal level, and now there was just this Kaczmarek attempt to ban the abortion pill on a federal level. So the point is that you can't give them an inch. You can't give them any ground because they don't think that way. They don't think about striking a compromise. They're nut jobs. They think that God is telling them to construct society in this way. So you make them marginal. That's the whole point.
I mean, yeah, this is about like controlling people, and again, like we need to have Republican lawmakers get between women and doctors. But there's a revealing thing she said up front. If you could just play this part, Bradley, just it shows me where like their heads are at here.
Big ban that puts women who are victims of rape and girls who are victims of incest in a hard spot isn't the way to change hearts and minds. It's not compassion.
Yeah, now hearts and minds comes from Vietnam. Hearts and minds refers to strategy and programs used by the governments of Vietnam and the United States during the Vietnam War to win the popular support of the Vietnamese people and to help defeat the Viet Cong insurgency. Like they literally are thinking of this in terms of counterinsurgency.
Well, yes, and the bottom line is like you're not going to win hearts and minds. That battle is lost. And so she's also like she's playing a double game here too. She's just looking to maintain her seat.
We use that in Iraq.
The hearts and minds is lost. The hearts and minds of the American public have been long settled. They want people to have the right to have an abortion. Period. End of story. There is no world in which an abortion ban will win the hearts and minds of the American public. It was imposed by 6 people, who 3 of whom were appointed by presidents who did not get the majority of the vote. Maybe actually more than 3. Because Alito was, I think that was after 2004, whatever. The point being that majority is solidified from a minoritarian perspective. There is that fight for the hearts and minds, which was the argument as to why we shouldn't we shouldn't be using what was that stuff with the fire? Napalm as much. That fight is over. They know it. They know it.